Hi, everyone. Welcome to our breakout this morning. We are about to start a panel discussion on the environmental impacts of tobacco and the efforts being made to support clean outdoor areas. So welcome, everyone, and welcome to our panelists. I'm really excited about this today. I have to say, when I was pretty naive as a parent, I was really focused on the health harms of e-cigarettes when I got into this work with PAVE as a volunteer. And this panel has really enlightened me on the environmental harms of not only the e-cigarettes in general, but more generally the tobacco industry. So I'm really excited about this, and I hope you'll all learn something as well. I want to welcome our four panelists. Today we're joined by Jeremiah Mock, who's a PhD and associate professor at the University of California, San Francisco. We're also joined today by Hannah Robbins Bruce, who's the marketing strategist at Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth, and Max Tyree, who's from Y Street Leadership. He's a team member from the Y Street Share the Air. And then finally, our very own PAVE colleague, Christina Kirel, who is an MPH and educational programs director and director of Vapes or Trash, which you'll hear about today. A fantastic campaign, and works with PAVE, with Parents Against Vaping E-Cigarettes. So welcome, everyone. And I'm going to turn it right over. We're going to have effectively, they're going to present, and then I'll be looking at the Q&A, and we can get into some questions that people might have. So Jeremiah, why don't you take it away?
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. And
are you kidding? It's such an honor. So great.
Oh yeah, and so can you see that? Yeah, that's the beautiful California coast just north of the Golden Gate Bridge for anybody who's been out in the San Francisco Bay Area, up in Marin County where I live, and that's actually my son out enjoying the beach when he was a bit younger. And I'm going to be talking with you today very quickly about reasons to protect the outdoor recreational and wilderness areas from vaping and smoking. And this work is supported by California's tobacco tax, the Tobacco-Related Disease Research Program. And I want to just acknowledge that I live with my family on the ancestral lands of the coastal Miwok people. And I think we would all be well to follow the wisdom of the Miwok in not polluting the air, land, and water that we depend on as for our food, for our sustenance, for our lives. So I want to give you 6 reasons for protecting outdoor areas from vaping and smoking. And the first 2 are the exposure to secondhand aerosol and waste pollution. The third is fire hazard. The fourth is about equity and inclusion. And the fifth is nuisance. And the sixth is about re-normalization. So I want to just very quickly take you through the guts of these pollutants. They have a wide range of toxins in them, and they include the lithium-ion batteries, which are hazardous waste and a fire hazard, along with all the plastic components that ultimately break down into microplastics. And this is in the case of the Juul pod, has quite a wide range of components, and importantly has residues of nicotine salts. So nicotine is an EPA-regulated acute hazardous waste. And also the solution, propylene glycol, vegetable glycerol, and benzoic acid, and flavorants, some of which are suspected to be carcinogenic. You're probably familiar with the so-called disposables in California. Here, Puff Bar has been the lead offender, and these have, in addition to nicotine salts and the solutions, the lithium-ion battery, all in one package, so to speak. You may never have seen this, but it's coming to you soon, more than likely. This is a heated tobacco product known as IQOS, which is manufactured by Philip Morris and has been distributed here in the US in some markets. Currently, they're in a battle with British American Tobacco, and so sales have been suspended, but they're still being sold up in Canada. And this is a teardown of the IQOS device. It has a circuit board, plastic components, the lithium-ion battery, and then it uses mini cigarettes that contain plastic components along with tobacco, which of course has nicotine and other toxic chemicals. And this is what a dissection of a used mini cigarette looks like. It has this scorched tobacco plug in it. And it is typically more dense than the typical cigarette butt, which you probably know is highly toxic. It also has polymers and some paper in it. I also just want to talk, since we're talking about vaping, there's a real intersection with nicotine vaping and cannabis vaping, particularly here in California. And these are the new generation of vaping products that we see saturating the market here. There are two types. On the left is a cannabis plant material vaporizer, and then on the right is the cannabis oil concentrate vaporizer. And of course, all these products are made with packaging. Typically, they have plastic packaging as well as paper. So just briefly want to cover the nicotine toxicology. So nicotine, as I mentioned, it's an environmental toxicant that damages nerve tissues, including the brain. It's a US EPA regulated hazardous waste. With regard to insects, nicotine is highly toxic to insects, including honeybees, butterflies, and other pollinators, and it's been used for many decades as a pesticide. With regard to aquatic life, nicotine is toxic to aquatic organisms, including small freshwater fish, saltwater fish, and crustaceans. And there are over 100 studies in animal models that demonstrate the neurotoxin effects and other harmful effects of nicotine. And typically those studies are done in rodents, and we know that rodents are an important base of the food chain, especially for higher order predators like owls and hawks. So if we focus in on e-cigarette toxicology, again, they contain nicotine residues. Additionally, they emit tobacco-specific nitrosamines. And I just point out that everything that's in red, if you look at the legend, those are FDA listed harmful and potentially harmful constituents. The items in orange are on a proposed list that FDA never approved of other harmful chemicals. And anything that's underlined is recognized by the International Agency on Research on Cancer as a group 1 carcinogen. So e-cigarettes also emit metals, and these are highly toxic, as well as chemicals like propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin or glycerol, and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Those are chemicals that are often come from petroleum, and metallic nanoparticles, as well as the plastic components. Just quickly, heated tobacco technology, and we look at the toxicology, again, containing nicotine. Studies found that IQOS produces higher levels of 56 chemicals that are of unknown toxicity, but they belong to a class of chemicals that have been shown to be significantly toxic. They emit volatile organic compounds, aldehydes, nanoparticles, and they have plastic components that break down. And lastly, cannabis vape toxicology. So the vapor emissions from cannabis cartridges have been shown to include 16 chemicals that are used in manufacturing and pesticides, 8 solvents, 4 chemicals used in plastics, and 15 other chemicals, plus abundant metals, including nickel and lead. And 8 of these chemicals are on the FDA's list of harmful or potentially harmful constituents. And this is just a list to point out those. Also, it's important to understand that cannabis flower and concentrates have been found to have high levels of pesticides. They greatly exceed the US EPA tolerances for these compounds in any commodities. This is a list of the pesticides. And you'll just notice here that the samples that were tested in this study, down in the lower right, 46% of the samples failed the EPA standards. So when these things end up being used, if they're being used by people who are around other people or animals or pets, those are exposed to secondhand aerosol. This is somebody exhaling a cloud of vapor, which we call aerosol. And the studies have shown that involuntary exposure to e-cigarette aerosol can cause alterations in respiratory function and symptoms of respiratory irritation. So people who are, in the proximity to somebody downwind, if they're exposed to the aerosol when it drifts, that's what they can experience. I just want to show you real quickly here at a Southern California beach what that looks like. So you can see that there are people out enjoying the beautiful evening and the sunset. And this gentleman has a vaping device, and he's decided to go out onto the beach and hit his vaping device and then exhale, and there's the plume. So whoever's downwind of that plume is going to be exposed. That's just one of many videos that I have taken.
Jeremiah, can I
yes.
interrupt and ask an ancillary question?
Yes.
And thank you for answering that one, because that did come in our Q&A. Is, what proof do we have? Can we back this with data? Can you also talk about third-hand smoke as well?
So the aerosols, of course, those inevitably all the particles in them are sticky, many of them, and they adhere to any kind of surfaces that they're on. The issue of third-hand exposure is really about what happens after the chemicals interact with other chemicals on surfaces like fabric, on clothing. So if you're outside and you're exposed, your clothes are exposed, and then you go home and you wash your clothes, then those toxicants can be released into the laundry. That's a common pathway for exposure, or when you're talking about outdoor exposure. So just coming back to heated tobacco products, then the aerosol that's released, there's a study that's been shown that involuntary exposure to heated tobacco product aerosol can trigger symptoms of asthma attacks and chest pain in people. And this is a photo that I took while I was doing field work in Japan. You can see that the young woman is hitting on a heated tobacco product device. I think it's probably an IQOS device, and sitting right next to a small child, and that child is almost certainly being exposed from the emissions. So when it comes to waste, this is what a collection that we did looks like of jewel pods and jewel caps that have the residues in them. And this is a progression of what they look like when they break down and release the residues and fragment into smaller and smaller pieces of plastic. And this is the packaging. This is a puff bar that we found. That's an IQOS so-called heat stick, a mini cigarette. And again, just to remind you, that's what the inside of it looks like. And here is a cannabis vape cartridge that I found actually close to where our governor went to middle school. And these are cartridges that have been crushed, so you can see that the contents have been released. This is what they look like when they're full. So just a couple of parks that we've been to in California where we found vaping waste in campgrounds and out at beaches. This is in Southern California at Crystal Cove. This is a cartridge from a pod from a Juul device. Just to remind you again, the third reason about fire hazard, lithium-ion batteries and e-cigarettes and heated tobacco products are known to spontaneously ignite and cause fires. If they're thrown out in a parking lot and driven over, there's a chance that that can happen. With regard to equity and inclusion, I think it's really important that we remember that everyone has the right to enjoy public lands and beaches. And some people stay away from those recreationals because of their fear of respiratory irritation. fear of having asthma triggered, fear of having chest pain triggered because of secondhand exposure to aerosols, and also, of course, to tobacco smoke, and the fear of wildfire. And finally, with regard to nuisance, you know, those of us who go out like here along our coast to enjoy the beach, you know, we do so in the hope that we are not, we're able to breathe the fresh air and not breathe whatever people are exhaling or whatever is vaporizing and drifting. And it's really a nuisance that spoils the experience of going out into the great outdoors. And when you talk about re-normalization, this is actually a beach that's supposed to be smoke-free in Japan. And unfortunately, what happens is with heated tobacco products, as they become more popular with young people, young Japanese, then they take them and use them at the beach. And when they do so, unfortunately, they follow the habit of cigarette smokers and discarding them into the sand, and they're exposing people around them to the emissions. So those are the 6 reasons that I would like to share with you about the reasons to protect our outdoor areas. And I really want to thank you for attending our presentation, and I hope that I can answer any questions that you have. From my family to yours, welcome anytime out here in California.
Thanks so much, Jeremiah. Appreciate that. So next up will be Hannah, I think, and maybe Max. And we'll do some questions after, but I'm still looking at the Q&A here.
Thank you. And wow, what a great presentation to follow. That was so helpful. I think I saw somebody said, like, I've been looking for that kind of information for a while. Same, and I work in this field. So that was very helpful. Thank you so much, Jeremiah. Hi, everybody. So I'm excited to be here today. My name is Hannah Robbins-Bruce. I am a marketing strategist at the foundation, the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth. And before I turn it over to my co-presenter, I did want to give a little bit of background information. So in about Virginia and tobacco and VFHY. So in just 12 years, the smoking rate here in Virginia among youth, oh, can you go back? Thank you. In just 12 years, the smoking rate among youth in Virginia has dropped by more than 75%. And according to our latest Virginia Youth Survey, or you all might know it as the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, sugar-sweetened beverage consumption by Virginians has also declined in the last few years. And one of the main reasons for this is the work of the Virginia Foundation for Healthy Youth's youth-led action group called Y Street. So with me today is a member of our Y Street leadership team. His name is Max Tyree, and you'll soon see and hear that he is the real superstar of this presentation. And actually, Max represents hundreds of active Y Street members across the state of Virginia. So before I turn it over to him, I did want to provide a little bit more detail about VFHY and Y Street as an entity. Next slide. Thanks, Olivia. Yeah, so VFHY was established by the Virginia General Assembly in 1999 when we received 10% of the Master Tobacco Settlement Agreement that was allocated to create an entire agency that would be responsible for preventing tobacco use among youth in Virginia. So we must have done a pretty good job, because in 2009, General Assembly of Virginia decided that VFHY should add preventing childhood obesity to our mission. And so that is what we do now. Our mission is to empower Virginia's youth to make healthy choices by promoting tobacco-free and nicotine-free, active, nutritious, healthy living. VFHY's comprehensive approach includes evidence-based classroom prevention programs. These take place in public schools, in after-school programs, and in community centers. We also implement prevention messaging campaigns, and of course, we manage a nationally recognized youth engagement effort, which is Y Street. Next slide. Thank you. So what is Y Street? So since 2004, VFHY, we've implemented the CDC's best practices for youth engagement. Hundreds of high school aged Y Street members like Max are trained every year on specific issues, on the issues objectives, and then they learn how to take action in their communities. As a government agency, we know the difference between, we are highly aware of the difference between providing education, doing advocacy work, and then lobbying. Awareness is where, we kind of fit squarely and nicely by giving information to the public. That's where we do a lot of our educating. Advocacy, though, is more Y Street's gig, right? So they engage the public with a simple and straightforward call to action. They do this with surveys, support cards. They do photo pledges, video testimonials, all of these things that are tangible and quantifiable results and can be shared with key decision makers, right? Policymakers. So really, this is the voice of Virginians, and Y Street gives just amazing volume to that voice. So now I'm going to turn it over to Max to share about our Y Street's tobacco prevention campaign.
Hello, my name is Max Tyree. I'm a junior at Charlottesville High School. I live in Charlottesville. I've been in Y Street for 2 years and a member of the leadership team for 1. So what exactly is Share the Air? First, we want to show you this short video to give you a little background on the campaign. Here's why this issue matters.
Virginians deserve to breathe clean, healthy air, even in outdoor spaces. Share the Air supports smoke-free, vapor-free, and tobacco-free outdoor spaces because aerosols from e-cigarettes and vapes can trigger asthma attacks, just like secondhand smoke does. And studies show outdoor levels of secondhand smoke can be the same as indoor levels. The places where our families spend time, like parks, beaches, and outdoor events, should be places everyone can enjoy. Visit sharetheairva.com and show your support.
So, as you can see from the video, Share the Air's primary goal is to create 100% tobacco-free and e-cigarette-free outdoor public spaces in Virginia. This includes areas like parklands, playgrounds, trails, beaches, festivals, fairs, and any other areas that are outdoor and meant to be enjoyed by the public. To help reach this goal, Y Street members from across Virginia engage members of their community in different ways to hear their perspectives on tobacco-free outdoor spaces, gather support from their community through this engagement, and finally conduct meetings with local parks and recreation departments and local government officials to encourage them to have their locality go tobacco and e-cigarette free. Engaging the community and gathering their messages of support helps in creating a tobacco and e-cigarette free environment. Engage in the community. For the campaign to be effective, it is crucial that Y Street members get out in their communities to create a sense of urgency around the need for tobacco-free parks and gain their support. To do this, we attend local community events to engage with peers in our communities. At these events, attendees are informed about the campaign and its goals. They are encouraged to show their support by completing surveys or messages of support to be used for further influence. We also encourage local media to learn about the campaign to share our messaging with a larger audience as well. I have seen these events in action and they are fantastic. They are very effective at getting people informed about Y Street and his campaigns and are always so fun. I have experience with social media engagement as well. Just yesterday, I participated in an Instagram live video informing people about Y Street leadership team. These community engagements are crucial to informing people about Share the Air, and being a part of them has been a fantastic experience for me. Another crucial step is gathering support. It is important that we use these surveys and messages of support that we've collected to make a compelling argument to localities that Virginians want what Share the Air is promoting. By engaging community members through our online and on-the-ground efforts like those that were just mentioned, we have collected over 7,000 surveys and 1,000 messages of support. We also narrow this data specifically to localities in Virginia that we meet with so they can see firsthand how those in their community feel about having clean air public spaces. A very important step is conducting meetings with key decision makers. Meeting with key decision makers and encouraging them to adopt a voluntary tobacco-free policy is an important step in our strategy. As we gather support, engage the community to create a sense of urgency on the issue, we understand that park directors and city leaders are in the unique position to move the needle from awareness to action by establishing tobacco and e-cigarette free outdoor recreational areas through voluntary policy adoption. Virginia faces some unique legal restrictions as it is a Dillon rule state. This means that local governments are only able to exercise powers granted to them by state governments. Because of this, we work with park directors and local government officials to adopt voluntary policies for going tobacco-free. These are not laws, and enforcement can often be done by park officials in their local areas. This prevents unnecessary legal distractions and keeps the power in the department's hands. Each meeting with these officials can look somewhat different, but we start by introducing the campaign and sharing any relevant state or local data we have to help convey support for the campaign's goals. Second, we want to highlight incentives and benefits to partnering with Share the Air to go beyond having healthier outdoor public spaces. Share the Air wants to serve as a partner and resource to these localities, and we have seen that additional support can often be a key incentive for departments to adopt a policy. Share the Air offers to provide support in answering questions from the public regarding the policy, presenting to other local officials if requested, promoting the policy to local media so the department is recognized, and providing free resources. I have attended many key decision maker meetings, and I feel that they have all been vital to policy change. At these meetings, we let legislators, park directors, and other important figures know all about our campaigns. They then discuss with us about the campaigns and ask any questions they have. In one meeting, for example, the legislator asked us about our statistics and why they matter. We were able to inform her about how important they are and why they matter, and she expressed her interest in our program. It is because of meetings like these that policy adoption occurs. Free resources. The Share the Air campaign is here to serve as a resource to make the process as light a lift as possible. With voluntary policy adoption, we provide free signage to be posted in designated areas. These signs are often very popular and ensure localities won't need to spend their own funds in promoting the new policy in its parklands. As of today, we have 5 total localities that have agreed to have their outdoor recreational areas go tobacco-free. 2 of these, Hopewell and Colonial Beach, became recent partners since the beginning of 2022, which is giving us some exciting momentum this year. We have collected 10,517 surveys, 1,660 support cards, held 24 community events, 17 key decision maker meetings, and won 5 policy victories. As we move forward, we will continue to keep the messaging positive. Localities and their staff respond better to a positive message about how going tobacco-free benefits them and their community. Positive messaging also resonates with Virginians in terms of gathering their support. Share the Air is not an anti-tobacco campaign, but rather a pro-environment and safe/healthy outdoor spaces campaign. We look forward to continuing our advocacy moving forward and to continue pushing for open-air public spaces that all Virginians can enjoy. Thank you so much for allowing us to share with you all today about 100% tobacco-free and e-cigarette-free outdoor spaces. We will now pass it to Ms. Christina to discuss the next portion of our presentation.
You know what, I just want to say before that, first of all, thank you so much for that presentation. It's really interesting. And what I love is that it really shows how communities can make a difference, right? That your voice really matters on a community level and you're making change happen, which is terrific. I mean, that's what PAVE is all about. It's really, you know, getting to it from the grassroots community level. So congratulations to all of you. It's really terrific. So thanks so much. Christina will be up next, and I'm seeing some great Q&A coming in. Let's see what Christina answers, and then we'll go to that. But I welcome Christina. I'm really excited for her to share this campaign with you all. You may be muted if you're Christina. We can't hear. Christina, can you all, I can't see if she's muted. Oh, it's those AirPods again. we have an AirPod problem. Is it possible to disconnect them? You have to put them in the case, as we know. Take your time.
Okay, now can you hear me?
Yep.
Sorry about that. Always an AirPod issue.
Okay.
I was saying to myself that it's just so nice to hear what both of these organizations, people are doing, you know, to hear about other support for this issue and the research and the policy work, looking at your campaign impact, Max and Hannah on Share the Air. I'm like about to share about one of our first ever live event for Vapes Are Trash, and you've had 24 and 5 policy wins, and it's just so cool to see. So as Mimi said, we are so excited to talk about the Vapes Are Trash campaign from Parents Against Vaping. I'm Christina Corral. I'm an MPH. My background is mostly in tobacco control, in health promotion and health communications. I consult in those areas, and I'm PAVE's Educational Programs Director and also the director of the Vapes Are Trash campaign. So I wanted to start off just, in the interest of not burying the lead, by showing some of our new campaign content that we're really excited about. The one on the left is about deforestation and says vapes harm more than your body. And then the one on the right is specifically about harms to birds. And it's one of a post that's made up of several graphics. I'll talk about that tactic later on, but it's one of our strongest performing pieces. So some of our other social media content, what happens before the vape is in your hand and what happens after, why are discarded vapes hazardous waste, and then this one pointing out industry exploitation and impacts on commercial tobacco farm workers. So just as an overview, Vapes Are Trash is a communications campaign. It's targeted at youth and youth vaping prevention. We've really made a concerted effort to gain youth input throughout the process of the campaign, which is now coming on a couple of years that we've been working on it. We had input from parents early on in the pandemic in summer of 2020 that they wanted another way to engage their kids and youth on this issue that wasn't just about health harms. And we know that the environmental issue really has power to resonate with this generation. And I also want to touch on something that Jeremiah did, but it's over the last 2 years been a growing part of the e-cigarette issue, and especially in the environment. Under environmental concerns are disposables. So disposable e-cigarettes, and if you can see this, my blur, this is my jar of vapes, but almost everything that I photographed and collected for this campaign are disposables. And as you can see here, they all have lithium-ion batteries, wiring, metal, and plastic parts, and they are used sort of similarly to a pack of cigarettes. Sometimes they contain much more nicotine, but they're used and thrown away. So the consumption and the sheer number of these really highlights the environmental issue. So just to speak a little bit about the background of the campaign and how we've gotten to where we are right now. Like I said, summer 2020, we had input from parents that they wanted a new way to engage kids on this. We really didn't have a budget for it. It was sort of a small side project. And we had a group of youth from across the country who were engaged on the issue and brainstorming with us and giving us input. We were bouncing ideas off of them. And we sort of asked these more broad questions about the issue to bring awareness. Like you see here, is there a right way to dispose of a vape containing all these toxic materials? Where do they all end up? The one on the right is comparing to a plastic straw. So, if you care about single-use plastics, if you care about plastic straws, you should care about disposable vapes because they're not only disposable or single-use plastics, but single-use electronics, right? So a huge thing for us was last summer in 2021, we were invited by the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene to apply for a grant. And we proposed to expand the Vapes Are Trash campaign and tailor it specifically for 13 to 24-year-olds in New York City. And we are so lucky and appreciative to have won that grant. So this past winter and spring, we've worked on redeveloping and tailoring the campaign specifically for that population. So just a note on what we're targeting here, it's really about attitudes, about the devices and about the companies, and about perceptions of social norms. So I'll get more into our messaging later, but just a note on, the campaign, of course, in the big picture, we're working on prevention and we're hoping that this is contributing to eventually less people vaping, less kids vaping. But the more immediate goals of the campaign are really about sort of culture around these products and how kids perceive, what's normal, and offering another narrative and a more negative narrative about the products and the companies behind them. So this grant allowed us to really dive into our messaging, to do some formative research, and full transparency, we're a very tiny team, as most of you know. We don't have a full research capacity to go into, formalized research for all of this, but we were able to do both sort of an exploratory phase of a lot of more desk research and consultation with experts like Jeremiah, legal experts from Public Health Law Center, people from New York City Department of Sanitation and their hazardous waste contractor, more youth consultation. And then, apart from doing that sort of exploratory stuff to see what are all the potential bases we could cover within the environmental issue, honing those messages. So we did an online survey and a focus group to sort of dive into all of that. I won't go into all of these because it'll take me too long, but the 5 key messages that we tested, we had these umbrellas, and when we presented them in the survey, it was like a statement encapsulating a key message and then a few bullet points of sort of background supporting information to fill it in. And we really saw a split, almost 50-50 between the more powerful and the less powerful ones. So the ones that we ended up not pursuing as much, that didn't seem to resonate as much, were about e-cigarettes being a waste management nightmare, being really hard to deal with. And the other one being about single use, disposables being single use products. So on the other hand, the ones that were most powerful were about environmental toxicity, the actual harms of the materials in these products and the effects that they have on different specific beings and on the environment. And then making the industry connection. So just simply saying that e-cigarettes are a part of the tobacco industry, which has always harmed people in the environment. And then the last and really by far the most powerful message was taking that industry message a step further and talking about injustice. So saying that e-cigarettes are part of an unjust industry that exploits people. So I won't be able to go into all the details, but through our survey and focus group, we're able to really dig into what parts of this were most impactful and how these kids were thinking about them. And what we came up with sort of as the underlying theme and message of the campaign is vapes are trash, exposing the human and environmental impacts of e-cigarettes and the tobacco industry. So it's again tying together e-cigarettes and the tobacco industry, because sometimes some kids or young people don't think of them as being that closely related or as of e-cigarettes as being part of the tobacco industry. And then really encouraging them to think about the impacts outside of just themselves. So some of the ways this shows up throughout the campaign are statements like vapes harm more than your body, which I think has the assumption there that vapes do harm your body, but we're sort of taking that and going a step further and saying, we all know they harm your body, they harm more than that. And that's often paired with imagery like the deforestation one that you saw, or showing some of the human exploitation that happens before in production and some of those industry practices. The second one is that the tobacco industry harms people and the environment at every stage of production, use, and disposal of its products, including vapes. The second and third bullet are sort of doing that same thing where it's like, what happens before and what happens after? There are materials in these products that harm people while they're being mined, because these contain heavy metals, for example, and lithium-ion batteries, or while they're being farmed. They can harm you while you're vaping them, and they can be harmful to the environment during, post-consumer waste. So that third one is what happens before a vape is in your hand and what happens after. And then the last one is more of a call to action. It says, don't support tobacco companies, don't smoke, and don't vape. And that's not something that's on every piece. It's really only where we're really calling out tobacco companies in the industry. But I will say, I think, especially if you think about this sort of underlying message that vapes are trash is exposing, it has almost like a journalistic feel. And we're really talking about awareness and education. We're not taking this and then saying, you need to quit now, or you need to do XYZ. It's more about sharing new information. And we do, where it feels appropriate in the content, say, if you or a friend are trying to quit, we have resources. Here are resources that can help you. So we want to, support people if that's something they're considering, but we're not trying to push a specific message. So just to go over a couple of the considerations that we had when we were redeveloping and rebranding, we wanted to brand the campaign independently. Originally, it was part of our Students Against Vaping SAVE initiative, and we thought that could potentially affect the amount and the profile of young people who are interested and willing to share and support the campaign. So Vapes Are Trash being branded independently might allow it to appeal to more people. We also made some intentional choices about brand color and the aesthetic. The green obviously plays with the environment. We used a secondary orange color to call out more urgent stuff, but I think it also just gives a more cohesive aesthetic to the whole campaign, which helps in shareability. And I just want to highlight that shareability is really important for this campaign, because specifically we're targeting attitudes and perceptions about social norms related to these products. So I think if you are a kid and or a young person and you see an ad on Instagram from a company or from an organization, it may have an impact on you. But if you see that your friend shared that to their story, or your friend sends it to you, that's implying some kind of support or engagement from your friend, and it may affect your perception of norms among your peers, right? So we really wanted to improve our original content by making it more shareable and by doing deeper dives into the information, by giving people more information. And one of the ways we did that is through what are called carousel posts, which you see at the bottom here. The left is the one that you would see on top, and it has an arrow. So this is a common thing on Instagram. You would see the top one with an arrow, you swipe, so you can read through it like a story. And with the example I'll show here, one of our most popular pieces and best performing pieces on social media, you know, the real like call to action and strong piece there is number 5, which says, don't support tobacco companies, don't smoke, and don't vape. And if you're a young person, the likelihood that you're going to send that to someone or share it may be low, because it's pretty strong and it's kind of bossy. You may have a lot of friends who vape. You don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. You may vape yourself and not want to share that, but sharing a different new piece of information with a beautiful bird on it may be something that you do share. And if more people see that and then swipe through, they're going to get to the strong message, right? So just quickly, the campaign that's targeting New York, we're using social, we have some print. We did a live event that I'll show you on Earth Day. We're going for earned media, and then also World No Tobacco Day is coming up on the 31st. I will give you content for that. This is just some snapshots from our Earth Day event. I know I need to wrap up. We did Polaroid photos. Shout out to Zara, who's on this call, who had a great idea to do that, to encourage people to post online and get our content out that way. We gave out posters. Some people who were able to hang them in public spaces took away posters. And just to say, you know, we're so excited about the potential growth of this campaign. It's really still new, and this grant from New York City has helped us give it legs. But just looking at May, for example, on Instagram, we've done actually less than $400. We've got 17,000 post likes. It's reaching, you know, we've got near 1 million impressions between Instagram and Snapchat. We're getting thousands of visits to our website. People are sharing it, they're saving it, and we think, you know, we really just want to grow from here. And I also want to show, of course, the comments are a huge mix. This is social media and it's targeting teenagers and people in their early 20s. So there are plenty of people who are talking about how they're vaping as they're typing this comment. It's not all positive, but I want to shout out, we are really getting some awesome feedback. You know, this is how you do an anti-vaping ad. This advertisement actually works. This made me think about my vaping. I'm trying to stop. I can't believe it. An actually good anti-vape ad. This is incredible. You can see that bird ad has over 5,000, and the one about pesticide and rat poison has almost 4,000. So we really are looking, you know, our New York City campaign is running through June, and then we are really looking at how to expand this and where we can bring it to new geographies, new audiences. We'd love to bring it to a national audience. We could look at new media channels, and we just sort of feel like the sky is the limit, and this is the beginning of something really great. I want to offer World No Tobacco Day content. So we have specific content for public health partners to be able to share. The QR code can take you there. I can also drop a link in the chat. We have suggested captions. We have some carousel posts. We have single graphic posts. Please tag us and mention us if you're going to use it. But yes, please feel free to share it. May 31st is World No Tobacco Day. So the whole week or so around that, we'll be posting this comment, and we'd love for you to do that as well. And thank you to WHO for allowing us to join their partner calls and share this content with global partners. And then this will take you to our Instagram. We're at vapesortrash.org or Instagram at vapesortrash. We're also on TikTok and Snapchat, but primarily we run all our content from Instagram. There's my email again. It's 12 p.m. I know we have, this is supposed to end at 12, but we also have a coffee break. So
yep, we have
I think
some time
we have
for questions.
Time to take some questions before we have to jump back onto the main line call. Sorry, I
Definitely.
spoke so
me too.
quickly. Thank you.
No, you're great. Thank you so much, Christina. I know it's a lot to get through. And it is really validating the response. And I'll just say there's a comment.
Mimi, you're muted.
here. Oh, I'm not muted. Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Do you also have? Oh, okay.
Can you hear me? No. Oh, you can hear me. Christina can't hear me. Okay. Okay. I just want to say we have an anonymous attendee that says, just along this same line, just a comment: when we talk about the nature of vapes and impact on the environment and risk, exposure to nicotine, risk of explosion, and risk of fire, to the teachers having to collect them, they are really getting interested. They are blank when we talk about the risk to their health, but they engage with the environment impact. So really validating. I love to hear that. So let's get to some of the questions, and these I think are for a number of you. One is asking, our school district is currently footing the bill for safe disposal of vape devices confiscated during school year. It can cost thousands to safely dispose of the hundreds of pounds we confiscate. Nicotine companies should be covering the cost, absolutely, of safe disposal, not schools and taxpayers. Are there any nationwide policies that require this to happen in the future? Can you talk a little bit about policy decisions and things that are happening? Maybe we start with Jeremiah, since I know you've been working on some of that. Or maybe any of you, really.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any specific policies at the federal level other than the EPA's requirement for handling any product that has nicotine residues, and the threshold is actually very low. So that's the reason that the schools end up faced with this situation. But I just want to point out that there really is no safe way to dispose of any of these products. If you look at it from an environmental point of view, there are ways that are possibly less harmful. If they end up in landfills, they still ultimately leach contaminants. And so we really need to recognize that the only safe way, and I want to just highlight and amplify what Christina had said, is that this is an industry-borne problem, and the industry is going to have to get out of the business of selling these products in order for us to end the environmental impacts. So we need to keep putting pressure on the industry to stop selling them.
Yeah, and there's some crazy statistic that Christina found. We don't have national statistics on all devices and all outlets of sales, but we know that every month, because now kids are using a lot of disposables, given the regulatory changes with flavors for pods. There are 10 million devices sold every month just in convenience stores, and I think online alone. So that's only convenience stores. So the national numbers must be ridiculous, and every one of those gets thrown in a trash can. I'm sure people are not responsibly disposing of those.
But
Christina?
even if, I was just going to add, we did include a possible message about how these are a waste management nightmare with young people, and it didn't resonate as much. But even if we were going to talk about that, or when we do, from Vapes Are Trash perspective, we're not really telling people what the responsible or the right thing to do is with them anymore, because as I found out from speaking with, and this is different, by locality and by state, but after speaking with the hazardous waste contractor for New York, what they say is that the best thing to do with them is to physically bring in the devices to household hazardous waste events. So, obviously there are a lot of accessibility issues there for anyone, let alone for young people who are probably trying to hide this from their parents. But even if you were to bring them in and they were to get to a hazardous waste management person, they still are removing and recycling the lithium-ion battery to the extent that that's possible, which in my limited understanding is that a lot of that battery is not going to be reused anyway. It's a small portion that's able to be recycled, but the rest of the components are still going to be landfilled or incinerated. So it's like, whether you put it in the garbage or the household recycling or take it to these places, the majority of the product is still going to end up harming the earth. It's going to be incinerated or landfilled. And we're obviously not trying to normalize vaping generally and just tell people about what the right way is to do it to get rid of them, because we don't want to promote vaping.
Yeah, well, there was a follow-up about, any recommendations for how schools should dispose of these things, right, when they're confiscated. So
yeah, I know it gets really hard because per EPA laws, schools become what's the term for it? Like large quantity generators of hazardous waste once you have above a certain weight, and then there's like a responsibility on you to dispose of them correctly. And obviously that's a burden, which is really hard. I know Boulder, Colorado has done a lot of work around this and set up like a partnership between the school district and waste management. And I think they're sort of seen as a model of how to deal with it. And we have resources on vapesortrash.org to see their program and get in touch with them if people are interested.
Interesting.
But otherwise,
yeah. This person did mention Colorado and Missouri, that they've learned a lot from them, but yeah, it's really hard. I mean, I know you did a lot of work with the Department of Sanitation in New York, and it was kind of discouraging, right? And what about any regulatory action? Is there any elected officials being swayed to take action? That was another question that came in. Like, is this a platform that they're using?
I've seen something state by state. I spoke on a panel to help educate people about a New York State law that was being proposed to ban single-use, to end the sale of single-use tobacco products, including filters, because cigarette butts, the filter is actually made of plastic. And there was something similar in California. Jeremiah, I don't know if you can speak any more to that one in particular, but I know there was some, I'm not sure how strong they were or how likely they are to succeed. And, you know, I guess I can't speak fully to those.
Yeah.
Yeah, the legislative effort in California failed. But I will tell you that here in Marin County, all of the jurisdictions in our county, including county unincorporated, passed bans on the sale of all flavored tobacco products, which of course included the vast majority of vaping products that were being consumed here. And from what I've seen from the garbology work that I've done following up, the vaping waste has really dried up. So I think it really points to the end game solution of eliminating the sale of these kinds of products as the best strategy.
Mm-hmm. Well, and someone just mentioned the DEA National Drug Takeback events now accept vape devices as part of their events. So that's something to consider, to share with people at, you know, schools and elsewhere, I guess. Again, putting the onus should be back on the industry and not on people collecting these. But and then Jeremiah, maybe you could quickly mention, because I know you're collecting a lot of this data. Are there any stats regarding e-waste from beach cleanups? And I know you've done a lot of this.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. Unfortunately, while the beach cleanups are a great effort for raising public awareness, they only capture a small fraction of whatever is disposed of, you know, because it's something that's not done consistently. And so we don't really have reliable data for tracking, you know, the cleanup of electronic products at beaches.
Okay. And when is our next session, did we say?
They're texting. I think it needs to get started.
So we have to go. There are so many great questions. I really appreciate it. We can also get to questions in our email. You can contact Christina or any of us at Education of Parents Against Vaping. Thank you all, your panelists, you're terrific. Really appreciate all the work you're doing to keep our world safe and clean. And we will go back. If you want to go back, you can rejoin the main panel after this. Thank you all so much.